I'm Mia O'Brien, and coming up today on the Jaguar Squad Show, Walker Little, Dewey Wingard, both in the concussion protocol. Parker Washington's status for Sunday's game against the Indianapolis Colts is unknown. I'll tell you why both of those injury situations, those concussion protocol notes, as well as Parker Washington, will affect the Jaguars' odds of defeating the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday.
Man, these dudes been overcoming injury. It's been next man up. Man, you can take almost anybody out of this lineup, and the Jaguars gonna show up and do what they do Sunday.
Duval, it's the Jaguars Squad. Everything Jacksonville Jaguars every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Gear up. The Jaguars Squad Show starts now.
I missed one, Tony Wiggins. I missed that Trayvon Walker lingering knee injury. What the heck is going on with the Jaguars' former number 1 overall pick? Welcome into a midweek edition of the Jaguar Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Mia O'Brien, Tony Wiggins. T-Wig, do you want to let the folks know where's our friend Marques Ogden? Where we think he is?
I think he was getting off a plane, and what happened is all those people, they stood up in the aisle. You know how those people do on the plane. They stand up in the aisle. I want to fight those people half the time, man. But I don't know, man. I kind of figured when he told us off air what time his plane landed, I'm like, ain't no way Marcus going to make it by 6. But he's probably fighting through traffic trying to get here. You know how those offensive linemen are. They kind of move real slow.
Hey, well, they're very deliberate. They're very intentional, which, speaking of, we will get to the Jaguars' offensive line and what it could look like Sunday in a battle for first place against the Indianapolis Colts. First and foremost, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. T-Wig, the injury report is in for this fine Wednesday, December 3rd, as we're recording this podcast and live on YouTube, which, hey, say hey in the chat if you're hanging out with us. We'd love to say hello to you. I see Hef, I see Duval TV, Troy is hanging out in the chat, Jay Baby, and of course, the one King David always hanging out with us here on Locked On Jaguars. But T-Wig, as we take a look at the Jaguars injury report coming through here just about an hour or so ago, 4 players did not practice on Wednesday, were not spotted on the field during the open viewing portion of Wednesday's practice. We'll get to whether or not I saw them in the locker room. Trayvon Walker still fighting with that knee injury. He was working off to the side with trainers, was not seen in the locker room after practice. Parker Washington, not seen on the field, was seen in the locker room. I did speak with him briefly. He, of course, had that hip injury that he suffered against the Titans in the win on Sunday. And then 2 players in the concussion protocol who did not practice, both Dewey Wingard, the safety, and Walker Little, the starting left tackle. If Little can't go, Cole Van Lanen would get that start at left tackle. And in the case of Dewey Wingard, it's kind of funny, to your point about the battle of attrition. Eric Murray's 21-day window to return was open last week. He was a full participant for the first time today in Jaguars practice. And so I say to you, I know you're not worried about any of these injuries. We'll get to the guys who were limited and in non-contact pennies here in just a second. But if there was one of these injuries that concerns you, T-Wig, because there is one that does concern me, maybe 2, what say you? Whose absence could impact this team's ability to win on Sunday, which as of now, the Colts pretty much across all the sports books right now are a 1.5-point road favorite?
Yeah, that's crazy. Probably for me, I mean, Trayvon's the obvious one because you really, he's not.
He's mine. Yep.
Yeah, he's gonna play. So I'll leave that one for you, Parker Washington, and I'll tell you why.
And that's the other one. So
yeah, because great minds, Mia. That's what it is. But Parker Washington, not because they can't find people to do or have an impact, especially with BT coming back. It's not that they can't find people to do when it's 11 on 11 from the line of scrimmage. He is a plus special teams player. Parker Washington might make the Pro Bowl if he can play enough games and make a little run down the stretch, because he's done good in punt return and he's done very, very good. A couple of times I've seen him on kick, but mainly the punt return game. And the reason why is it's not necessarily about running back a touchdown. That's why I call him a plus player in that area. Mm-hmm. It's fielding the ball. How many times have you seen guys get back there, Tank Bigsby, whoever it was, and they don't feel the ball. I think you feel real comfortable with him back there feeling the ball because of his sturdy build. He's not worried about a little contact. And the plus side of that is he's just really good at returning punts. So it's almost as if it's an advantage that goes away as opposed to it's not like you're missing a side tooth or something. It's like, no, you got one, but the advantage when you have him is you got one with a switchblade on it. So, that's what I mean. It's like the extra that you get from him, and we've seen it in this league, especially with this team. You need that extra, just that little bit. Jakobi Meyers with that little bit more of consistency, catching the ball. The little extra pop they get from Bashal Tootin that they weren't getting from the kid they traded away to Philadelphia. It's just little stuff. And that's the thing, man. The little bit of speed we talked about with BJ Green and Strigo as opposed to Ogba. So it all comes down to little things, man. A guy getting his finger up and knocking a ball down from a receiver in the back of the end zone. That is the difference between these games. And Parker Washington, just think about this. Would the Jaguars have beaten the 49ers without Parker Washington's touchdown?
Nope. No way. That punt return touchdown, statistically speaking, yes, but I think emotionally and what he does in terms of swaying momentum in a game. And to that point, too, since you brought up Jakobi Meyers, T-Wig, well, yes, and we'll rattle off some of the numbers because they're out from his first 3 weeks in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform and how impressive he has stacked up across the league. But at the same time, I think much of Jakobi Meyers' success is because, especially without Brian Thomas Jr. the last 2 out of the last 3 weeks, a lot of his success has been because Parker Washington is on the field and defenses are keying in on him. Without Parker Washington, ultimately, maybe you see more run for Tim Patrick. Perhaps Dyami Brown is not a healthy scratch, but neither of those two players, A, can be the punt returner that Parker Washington is, and B, can't do that dirty. Well, I take that back. Tim Patrick can do that dirty work. He can play all 3 wide receiver positions, but he doesn't have that same build that Parker Washington does, the crafty slot, shorter of stature, yes, but physical, and certainly the lower body, strong as heck. I think that Tim Patrick gives them a different look. He's that bigger bodied receiver they can use both in blocking as well as a red zone threat. I think he can go over the middle of the field, which is more than certainly Brown and BTJ could say in the first few weeks of the season. That's where my bigger concern is without Parker. Defenses will be able to key in on Jakobi Meyers much easier, even if Brian Thomas Jr. is also back on the field.
Yeah, I think BT coming back, though, makes a tremendous difference. And the reason why I'm encouraged is because, it's hard to sit here all the years you've been watching football and say, I'm so encouraged just because a guy didn't drop a pass, right? But it wasn't necessarily that. It was also his ability on the Jakobi Meyers play, the dig and dagger when he caught it and was running. Did you see the effort from Brian Thomas Jr.? So to me, that effort indicated to me that, okay, football's about blocking and tackling, hustling, and he's doing it instinctively. So he's back to playing football. And when you're back to playing football, you're not worried about nothing. So that gave me a little bit of a signal that he kind of has sat and watched and said, you know what, I want to be a part of this thing. These dudes winning without me. Now, all he has to do is be 75% of what he was last year. And having him on the field with Jakobi Meyers in that capacity, and then now looking at Dyami and saying, okay, you were the starter, you went down, Parker steps up, these other guys have stepped up. Guess what? We need you to do that now. You're getting paid all of that money. Show us what you got. And hopefully he can duplicate what happened last year in Washington, where he had the 4 or 5 best games of his career and it got him $10 million. Just tell him it's another carrot out there dangling somewhere. Go have you a good another 5 or 6 games down the stretch.
Before we circle back to Trayvon Walker and then some of the other notes from the Jaguars injury report, yes, King David, is Parker playing this weekend? We do not know. I would just tell you that from some of the conversations I had around the building today, it's unclear. It is unclear. It is not a given that he would play on Sunday. Social wants to know, do we have a player who can catch a punt aside from actually returning it? I will tell you this, Social. The 4 players who were working during kickoff return duty during the open viewing portion of Jaguars practice today, LaQuint Allen, Bashal Tootin, Austin Trammell now on the practice squad, and Dyami Brown, which is a big reason why he was a healthy scratch against Tennessee. because outside of being a kickoff returner, which at that point Austin Trammell was on the 53-man roster, T-Wig, he doesn't give you anything on special teams. If he can be that punt returner in lieu of a potential Parker Washington absence, that probably gets him a jersey on game day, even though he hasn't returned punts since high school.
Yeah, that's kind of risky for me. This is where I think you might see them elevate Trammell at some point before the game, because like I said, it's one of those things that you don't really think about during the course of a football game. Like, nobody thinks about who's going to field a punt. Nobody thinks about the long snapper. What about the holder? What if your punter gets hurt and Trevor's not used to doing that? Or, it's all of these little things, man. And it's going to be very, very important that they make sure that something like that, and trust me, those coaches, they think about, they micro think about all of these things. And they're not going to go out there, I believe, and let a dude who ain't fielded punts since high school. I can't even imagine the stuff somebody asked me to do. I did in high school, but they're not going to, I don't think they'll chance it. With this game being that big, man, you can't let it come down to that.
Hey, now, they did ask him to return punts after never seeing him do it in the NFL against the Rams. So
maybe
they was a little surprised, and that was on Friday before the game. Back to the Trayvon Walker of it all. Hef says that Trayvon is the biggest loss because he would whip Braden Smith, and this is the same starting five along the offensive line for the Colts as it has been each of their first 12 games this season, which is unprecedented and very much in the minority in the National Football League. You usually don't see the same starting five week in and week out because of attrition. To that point, I do want to read this stat from our friend Gus Logue over at Duval 22, T-Wig. Among 60 qualifying linebackers this season, Dennis Gardeck, 6th in pressures, 13th in pass rush win rate. We've seen him coming off the edge, a design pass rusher, much more at a wide 9 opposite Josh Hines-Allen or BJ Green, Danny Strigow, DeJuan Smoot, Emmanuel Ogbah. I don't want to say they're okay without Trayvon, because in the run defense, he obviously is a significant upgrade from any of those players who I just listed, outside of perhaps Smoot. And even then, Trayvon Walker has a higher defense run stuff rate compared to DeJuan Smoot. At the same time, in terms of pass rush, the Jaguars, even with the quote-unquote more McDonald's defensive game plan as opposed to the Cheesecake Factory menu, as Dewey Wingard coined the phrase to the CBS broadcast crew, they've been able to generate pressure the last few weeks. Do you anticipate them struggling against this Colts starting five, especially if they don't have Trayvon Walker?
It depends on what you mean by struggle. So I'll go through it real quick. Remember that thing I said about move tight ends, where you get a tight end like Brenton Strange, it doesn't tell the defense what the play is because he can block and he can go out. Okay. As opposed to just having Evan Ingram, and it's like, ain't no way they're going to run this with him. And if they do, they're just trying to fool us, right? So what Trayvon gives you is when they break the huddle and they're going to rush with 4, and whoever that was, King, I don't know who it was, but he's right. He beat up on Braden Smith last year. I think he had 2 sacks against him. So guys remember that kind of stuff. When they break the huddle and you see him and Josh, we don't know what the play is on offense. So if they want to run, they're going to run, but we're not at a weakness because Trayvon is very good against the run. If they want to pass, let them pass. We'll try to get there with 4. Here's what happens when you go to Dennis Gardeck lined up in 9 wide. They audible and they give the ball to Jonathan Taylor. That's a problem because they'll catch you in that stuff, right? And then if you flip it around with Smoot, they may go ahead and take their chances with whatever the play call is. The key to all of this is Daniel Jones has a fractured fibula. And I did the crossover that we recorded. It's going to be on tomorrow. Look, man, he can't move. So the blitz has been bothering him for 2 weeks. I anticipate a quick passing game. I would stop the run first and force him to be uncomfortable, and then do what I've been doing all year if you're Campanile, and that is start sending guys off the shallow, send guys off the tight slot. But then you do that, and now you're going to leave that big tight end wide open. So that it's a double whammy when it comes to them. So I do agree. Trayvon is super, super important. I just didn't have any expectation that he would play.
One of our other friends in the chat wanted to know about Eric Armstead's status. He was at practice, albeit limited, on Wednesday with what appears to be a club hand all wrapped up, that hand that he had an injury. It was in practice, by the way, folks. Don't believe these rumors about he cut himself cutting the turkey. Like, I don't know who started that. even if it wasn't jest, now it keeps showing up in my mentions on every show that I do online. Like, it was not a Thanksgiving accident. It was something that occurred in that lightly attended Jaguars practice. And by lightly attended, I mean not a lot of media were there when the injury apparently occurred. And I don't even know if it was during the open viewing portion of practice, T-Wig. But to that end, I would say they're trending in the right direction from everything I saw for Armstead to play. But obviously, if he doesn't have, like we saw with Trayvon Walker, if he doesn't have the full use of those extremities in his fingers, that's going to affect how he plays, even if he does play a bit of a different position inside compared to on the edge compared to Trayvon.
Yeah, I heard Marques when Marques was talking about how hard it is for defensive ends because they got to use their hands. That's why they measure their hand size. They use their hands to throw people in their wrists. And if you don't have that flexibility, it could be very, very difficult. So I go back to Jonathan Taylor again, man. And then you're talking about lining him up across with some heavy heat when it comes to their interior of their offensive line with the Colts. And he has to tackle a great player. If you can't use your fingers, man, Jonathan Taylor, you ain't grabbing those legs. You talk about Parker Washington's legs. This dude got some legs that look like tree trunks. So the thing is you want someone to have all of their means. You can get some snaps out of him, but if he can't move that hand, man, I think they'll be pretty transparent with it. The defensive line coach will ask him, how you doing? And I think he'll probably be honest with him. And then they can start playing some of those, some of the younger guys and maybe mix and match how they do everything. But I want them to first put the Colts in long down and distance, because now you force the Colts to come up out. And then I want the offense to score points, because then the Colts can't sit there and try to run it down your throat all day. So there's a lot to go into that. But, yeah, it's something to watch, man, because a defensive lineman definitely needs his hands.
And one more note, yes, you can't forget that the Colts, two of their best defensive players are hurt. No Sauce Gardner after the calf injury that he suffered. That is not a torn Achilles. It is not a ruptured Achilles. He is expected back at some point this year, but that will not be this Sunday against the Jaguars. And no DeForest Buckner. I actually just found this out in recording my other podcast for tomorrow, T-Wig. I didn't realize Buckner went down to Panama to get that neck surgery done. A little funky. Curious to see, what exactly the extent of this injury was, why he had to leave the continental United States for a second opinion. So just file that one away, folks. And some other notes from Wednesday's practice up in Indianapolis. Kenny Moore did not practice. He has an illness as well as an ankle injury. Tyquan Lewis, the edge rusher, did not practice with an ankle injury. And then Josh Downs, the hip and the knee injuries, did not practice. Just 2 catches last week on 6 targets against the Texans for the talented slot receiver. And then, of course, no practice for Sauce Gardner. But Daniel Jones, a full participant, T-Wig, somehow, some way. I don't know. What I do know, social says no Buckner, run. Something tells me that's going to come up at some point in time on today's program.
Yeah. As far as Daniel Jones is concerned, I guess something that we've been hearing for a long time about football is true. A high ankle sprain really is worse than a break. This dude has a fracture, and it sounds worse than a high ankle sprain. If he had a high ankle sprain, he'd be out for 6 weeks. So it confirms it.
I don't know. I want to know. I thought the fibula was one of the major bones in a leg, but evidently it's one that's just, if it's just slightly fractured, you're okay. Yeah. You're good to play. Not like it was a complete break. Hef says Grover Stewart is still a beast against the run. Amen to that, Hef. Something tells me that might be one of our biggest concerns heading into Sunday's matchup. We will discuss those concerns next here on the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. Hi, guys. I want to tell you about our friends at, wait for it, there it is, Betterhelp. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. As the days get shorter and the nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. This season, it's so important to reach out and check in with friends, family, or even yourself. Just like checking in on a teammate or reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while can lift your spirits, reaching out for therapy can make a real difference too. BetterHelp makes that first step easier by connecting you with a licensed therapist online from wherever you are. I've personally started using BetterHelp. I started using it about a year ago, and I've noticed that simply talking things through, even for a few minutes, helps clear my head and get me back on track. Be like me and over 5 million others who have used BetterHelp. And with 30,000 therapists available, finding support really is just a few clicks away. This month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. Listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Because taking that step towards support might just leave you wondering, why didn't I do that sooner? Welcome back into a Wednesday edition of the Jaguar Squad Show. We are waiting, potentially, for Marques Ogden to join us on his way back from the airport up in Raleigh. But hey, in the interim, Mia O'Brien, Tony T. Wiggins hanging out with you guys, getting you ready for the Jaguars and the Colts this Sunday, week 14 in the National Football League. All right, T-Wig, we already talked about a couple of the big storylines heading into this one with our injury update. Big picture for you, though. Your number one concern for the Jacksonville Jaguars, whether that's a matchup, whether that's a player on the other side, or maybe it's something in-house that worries you heading into this matchup is?
That's a great question. The biggest concern for me is that they get Jonathan Taylor to death. And they've also, when you think about it, you think about Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Dalton Schultz made a play or two here or there. Even Oronde Gasson, he was the only one making any plays. I'm sitting there thinking, like, I don't want to say they struggle with tight ends, but yeah, when you think about it, they kind of struggle with tight ends, right? Well, this kid is a whole different animal. He's like 6'6", 265 pounds, and though he doesn't have a 100-yard receiving game yet, he does what he needs to do in terms of being in the shallow, being on the side. They run a lot of screens, bubble screen, believe it or not, with him, so you can't be shy about tackling. But when you combine that with a gimpy quarterback, but you got a power game, a good running back is always a good friend of the quarterback, and then they say a good tight end. What did we say about Britton Strange with Trevor? So you get that element going, and then, oh, by the way, I asked Hicks today from Locked On Colts, what about Michael Pittman? He said, what about Michael Pittman? He said, it ain't the problem. Like I said, it's Alec Pierce. Pierce is averaging like 22 yards a catch. So what they do,
and you don't want to look at his numbers against the Jaguars, but continue while I pull that up.
Man. So what they do is they just pound you, and then you get to looking over here, and then they hit this tight end, and now they got you on skates, and then they do play action, and you forget, and there he goes, the big play. What I'm really describing is the Seattle game. That's what I'm describing, where they just do enough to keep getting first downs, and all of a sudden they catch you in a bad coverage, and bang, they got you. And that's a hard team to be trying to come back from. I do think, though, there's some potential for you to be able to come back from behind with the Colts, but I don't want to do that. And I'm thinking about the weather too, Mia, and I'm hearing a chance for a sloppy field, which means both teams may try to play this game in a phone booth. It's just going to be a weird game, man. I think the Jags need to get off to a really, really good start. I think a touchdown on that first drive would really, really help. And if you can get them to go 3 and out, maybe get another field goal and get up 10 in inclement weather in a loud stadium with a gimpy quarterback, that's the best scenario for me.
We appreciate you guys chiming in with your biggest concern in this matchup against the Colts. King David says number one concern is Trevor's consistency. Social says Jonathan Taylor and only Jonathan Taylor. I would echo that sentiment, but at the same time, Alec Pierce has certainly been the Jaguar killer, despite the fact that he has been the number 2 or 3 option in Indianapolis since he was drafted out of the University of Cincinnati. Against the Jaguars, he has 18 career points. Just for the record, he has so that's like touchdowns and everything. So 6 touchdowns. So that's three touchdowns against the Jags. He has 2 against the Texans in his career. 1 came last week, so that doesn't count. And obviously, this is going against AFC South rivals more than other teams across the National Football League. T-Wig, I'm curious, how many other touchdowns? So if we take those 5 touchdowns away, the 2 against the Texans and the 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, how many touchdowns do you think Alec Pierce has in his career?
Total, maybe 11.
Yeah, 13. So so you subtract 13 total. So you subtract the 5. That's 8.
Yeah.
8 against the 30 other teams in the National Football League.
See?
And the one against the Texans came last week in the first matchup between these two teams. And so he's certainly a concern for me for exactly the same reasons you alluded to. This idea of Daniel Jones is just going to sit back there. He's going to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. They are going to try to run the ball come hell or come high water. Yes, he has averaged 62 yards on the ground per contest each of the last 2 weeks in these two losses during this losing streak for Indianapolis, but he did average 4 yards a pop last week, 4 yards a pop, 4 yards a pop, 4 yards a pop, back to back to back is going to add up at some point in time. Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, the Jaguars are hoping that they have a similar scenario play out with Travis Etienne. But if you're the Colts, if you can ride Jonathan Taylor and it creates that opportunity because the defense starts crowding the box to take a shot downfield with Alec Pierce, I don't envision Daniel Jones rolling out on a bootleg like he was able to do the last time he came to Jacksonville, which I saw the earlier comment about how he is 1-0 in his career as a quarterback, but obviously as a member of the New York Giants at Everbank Stadium. Daniel Jones had 107 rushing yards in that 2022 meeting, T-Wig. He is not going to have that on Sunday, especially if the conditions are as you described.
Yep, he won't. And that means blitzing him up the middle, coming through the 8 gap, trying to force him to have to go side to side. It's going to be a real interesting chess match for me to see. And that's why I keep talking about down and distance, because down and distance dictates the kind of call. It dictates where he's going to be, whether he's going to be on the center, whether he's going to be in shotgun. And then it gives you a target if you're those defensive players. So a critical thing, man, is how is he going to be, and then how the flow of the game is going to go. So that leads us to something that's bothered the Jacksonville Jaguars to me, and that's penalties. You can't anticipate penalties, but I tell you what, the Jaguars get too many. They just get too, even when they play well like last week, they still had too many penalties. And those kind of things, and when they say they need to clean stuff up, that's the first thing I think about. Because some of those penalties they're getting are really unforced and it's like unnecessary. And then they got to do everything the hard way. I'm almost sitting there thinking they're doing it on purpose just so things can get hard, because that's when they just loosen up and play real well.
I agree. And what's funny is, and I know you certainly, I'm sure, felt this when you were recording with the Locked On Colts crew. When you talk to Indy reporters, they're like, oh yeah, the penalties have really started racking up for us. And then you go back and you look, and I think they had 6 total penalties against the Houston Texans last week.
Hey, y'all think that's something? Sit down for a minute. Let me tell you, we've had 6 and a quarter before, dude. That ain't what you talking about. That ain't no penalties.
We've had 6 on the same drive on the pre-snap front. Like, come on now. And as much as they cleaned it up against the Cardinals and the Chargers in back-to-back weeks, it started creeping up again, even in a 25-3 victory over the Titans this past weekend. Again, biggest concern against the Colts. Let's hear from you guys in the YouTube chat. Clarence says, I think Etienne and Tootin are going to have to be our Fred and MJD 2006 running backs. The defense is going to have a field day. But to the point of Etienne and Bashal Tootin, lest we forget 2006, what Clarence is alluding to, T-Wig, that was the year that the Indianapolis Colts won the Super Bowl. But in one of their 2 meetings with the Jacksonville Jaguars, those 2 running backs went for over 200 yards on the ground in a meeting that will never be forgotten in Jacksonville Jaguars history. And I agree with Clarence. I would love to see that. I'm interested if the Jaguars can run on the Colts at that rate. The Colts right now, 18th in total rushing defense, and that number and that ranking has dropped here during this losing streak.
Yeah, so this might take you back a little bit to that same Seattle game, because Seattle was actually statistically very good at stopping the run, even though they had some guys who had been banged up and hadn't played together. But they were missing their top 3 corners in that game. And what happened is remember the Jaguars got real pass happy, and Liam even said something to the extent of, perhaps we got away from focusing on our strengths because we were trying to take advantage of the weakness of the opponent. And that weakness turned out to not be a weakness, because those dudes were playing off and that front 7 was humming, right? So this is where I look at the Jaguars and I say, okay, we ought to be running it, but we need to score some points. Because if we score points, Daniel Jones got to come out and play. That's one thing. The other thing is they traded for Sauce Gardner for a reason, and he ain't playing. Who is that over there? I will break the huddle and be like, where little daddy at? There he is right here, because that might be a target. So do you focus on your strengths first, or do you say, you know what, let's get out here and be aggressive and get ahead? Like, say it's not raining, but you expect it to rain. Let's throw it now, get ahead, force them to have to throw so we can make Daniel Jones uncomfortable. Do we attack this corner who I don't even know what his name is?
Mekhi Blackman, it appears, or Jalen Jones. One or the other will be out there.
Whoever it is, they got to guard somebody, either BT or Jacoby, right? Mm-hmm. Do you take that approach to it, or do you just come out and test the waters and take what's there? It's going to be that's why I say the chess match to this is going to be tremendous, man. But what I don't want them to do is get in that phone booth. Don't you go trading 3 yards in a cloud of dust with a team that's got a banged up quarterback, because now you're taking away your advantage. I don't want them to do that, because that running back, that guard, that center, that tight end, they're probably better at that than our guys, you know, for what it's worth. A couple of those dudes are all pros or whatever. So I wouldn't want to be playing their game on their terrain here in Duval County. I want them to play my game.
Hef says strengths that attack the weaknesses. It is about us. Play Jaguars football, as Robert says as well. And Clarence, this is a different team. We finally have a head coach that cares about players. This is why these guys will win this game on Sunday. He wants to lock it. All right, Clarence, I hear you. And I hear you too, Social. Mia made 3 touchdowns sound like so many. Look, if he's got 13 in his career, 3 of them are against the Jags. That's 25%, bro. There's 31 other teams or 30 other teams in the National Football League. Cut me some slack. My father's a CPA. I don't handle the math around here. When we come back, we are going to decipher Lou Anarumo's defense. How have they been able to stifle offenses, or at the very least, they were able to do so in the early part of the 2025 season? That's coming up next year on a midweek edition of the Jaguar Squad Show. Hi, friends. I want to tell you about my friends at SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the biz. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on a job where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Speaking of the Trademaster perks, join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit SupplyHouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's SupplyHouse.com. Real people, real service. Promo code SHNFL5 today. Welcome back. It's the tag team of Mia O'Brien and T-Wig here on a Wednesday edition of the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. We've got 2 segments to go, T-Wig, about a half hour's time here on YouTube on the Locked On Jaguars channel live. We'll see if our friend Marques Ogden gets off the plane, if he's able to make his way into today's program. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, nearly 100 of you hanging out live on this fine Wednesday, as we now turn our attention to the Colts defense. The Jaguars Colts week 14 at the bank. The first time the Jaguars will face defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo since he was fired by the Cincinnati Bengals, joined Shane Seichen's staff in Indianapolis. And T-Wig, certainly no DeForest Buckner and Sauce Gardner. That point we have exhausted so far through our first half hour of tonight's program. Who else on that defense, what else schematically has given them the edge at times in 2025?
Maybe not from a player perspective, but to me, it's just been the structure and the structure of Lou Anarumo and what he does. All y'all got to do is just think back to the Bengals, right? And I know we always kid and say the Bengals didn't have a whole bunch of defense. At some point, they actually did have defense. They just didn't have defense last year. And talk about dumping the wrong cargo. They fired this dude, and this dude might be defensive coach of the year in the National Football League outside of Houston. And now the Bengals are struggling on defense. You think they got rid of the wrong people? I do, but he's a real, real good coach. And I think it's more about the complete system as opposed to it being about just 1 or 2 people. Now, with Gardner there, they would have had two tall corners because Charvarius was like 6'1.5", 6'2", and Gardner goes about 6'3". So normally, if you think about them, think about the way Richard Sherman and those guys played, where they play the way that they play, and it's hard to get anything deep. So it's almost as if it's like dying a slow death. You got to beat them. They make you repeatedly be consistent at beating them. So imagine this. If a guy's going to make you go 10, 11, 12 plays, and the way that they play defense doesn't give up big plays, and I love Nick Cross at safety. I told y'all that the other day. That's my guy.
Mm-hmm.
If they make you earn everything, this is why it's important about those penalties that I keep talking about. It's almost as if he wants to play it that way, he'll say, just make them go 10, 12 plays. They're going to back up. Trust me. The more you leave them out there, the more they're going to back up. If you run 75 plays and get 11 penalties, that's a penalty every 7 plays. So my thing is, it's like they'll screw it up. Just don't give up anything big, and you don't do anything stupid. Just watch. And so that's why I'm saying this. They don't give up a lot of big plays. They make you be very, very patient. And that's where Trevor Lawrence, that's why I agree with somebody they said about Trevor Lawrence. He has to be patient and not inconsistent. Still be aggressive and trust yourself and rip it, but you cannot get impatient. Like we've seen him do it. He hasn't done it in a while, but there are times when he could take the little check down and get a first down. Trevor will try to throw that thing down the field. It's like, why didn't he just take that? I've seen people in the press box say it. Me and you said, why didn't you take the check down? The dude was right there. So be patient, because if you don't, you'll be over there playing chess. I don't know how old Anarumo is. I guess he's like 55 or something like that. Mm-hmm. You'll be playing chess with a 55-year-old man, and you ain't gonna beat him because he's been around the block.
Historically, Trevor Lawrence pretty good against Gus Bradley, the former DC, and of course, former head coach here in Jacksonville, out in Indianapolis, where he ran that Seattle cover 3 that also forces you to slowly matriculate down the field. They allow for you to take whatever is soft and underneath and continue to advance, because they want you to make the mistake, T-Wig. And Trevor has had success against the Indianapolis Colts and that defense. This is clearly, though, a different defensive scheme. What I think is interesting, and if you're a Colts fan, because to your point, I think the Bengals fans are like, we literally got rid of Anarumo to just hire one of his disciples in Al Golding. And what actually is the difference between the defense that we ran that took us to the Super Bowl and the defense we're running now? Oh, wait, it's the people that were drafted here. But
there you go.
Neither here nor there. I think if you're an Indianapolis Colts fan, I think that, again, defensively, the principles are different than the cover 3, but at the same time, it is still asking offenses to slowly matriculate down the field. What's the saying that Ryan Nielsen, call him Rick Nielsen too. Ryan Nielsen had nothing cheap, nothing deep. Well, they'll give you what's cheap. Ryan Nielsen will give you both of those things. His defenses last year in Jacksonville would, at least. But Lou Anarumo's defense this year will give you what's cheap. They will not give you what is deep. But ultimately, they also can get home. And that is something that the Gus Bradley defense struggled with, despite the players that were so talented in the pre-draft process that Chris Ballard drafted. And so do want to note, this is a Colts team that has the ability to not only generate takeaways, they have 12 interceptions alone this year, 3 each to Cam Bynum, the veteran safety they signed in free agency, and 3 for Laiatu Latu, the talented former first-round edge rusher, the first defensive player taken in last year's NFL draft. He also has 5.5 sacks to lead the Colts this season, and on the year, the Colts have 35 sacks, middle of the pack in the National Football League, but pretty still darn good compared to where they were a year ago.
Yeah, a lot of that too is being ahead. That's why they won all those games early. They were like 8-1, right? So,
and that's the big thing too. This Colts defense has played with a lead historically throughout the course of the season, but not the last month or so.
Right, and they've lost. So that's the point that I keep making about getting off to an early start. Don't get behind them. You get behind them, they're going to run when they want to and run when they have to and pass when they want to and pass when they have to. The thing and the key is, and they keep their defense off the field. The key for me, man, is just all of this stuff that we're saying. It's situational football, complementary football. We've seen the Jaguars do it at a very, very high level. This is a good week for them to keep doing that.
Hef says, no big on big pass blocking, please. They need more zone pass blocking this week as well. And Paladin adds, of the teams that they have lost to, as in the Indianapolis Colts, Steelers, Broncos, Chiefs, Texans, we can run the football the best of those teams. What say you to the run blocking conversation our friends are having in the chat, T-Wig?
That's a good point. I mean, and see, that's attacking their weakness with your strength. I think somebody just said that. By the way, you might
said that. Yep.
Yeah, you might see that on T-shirt, dog. If you ain't got it copyrighted, you might see Wigg sitting up here on the podcast saying that on his shirt. But it's the truth. When what you do well lines up with what they don't do, that's why I said maybe you come out and at least try it. See what they got. You know, me and you cover basketball. When we were in high school, the coach said we might be in man-to-man, and those jokers got off they could have got off the bus cold. Let's start out in zone. Let's see if they can't throw a rock in the ocean. We never have to get beat for a layup if they can't shoot. No. So what you do is you come out and you see what they got. Let's see what they got. Let's test them. You throw that body punch. If you start getting that push, even if you don't get the yards, but if you notice, the eye in the sky notices that you're getting pushed and that they're cheating guys up, well, there you go. You set the table for yourself by at least coming out and starting with running the football, which is why I keep referencing the Seattle game. Don't get caught up trying to take advantage of their weakness and forget about your strength. And the Jaguars did that in that game, and it cost them.
I saw at least one person, and I'm scrolling back trying to find your comment, mention Kenny Moore, the talented nickel corner for the Indianapolis Colts, and the threat that he presents. Your thoughts on him, T-Wig, because I know you went in depth on Nick Cross on our Sunday postgame show, but especially in light of the comments from Liam Coen today when I asked him about Tyler Warren, and he talked about that 4th and 2 play against the Falcons and how the nickel corner for Atlanta had the perfect positioning and there was nothing he could do because Tyler Warren is just a ball player. Mm-hmm. Part of me heard that at surface level. And then the other part of me, when he followed that up with, yeah, you probably need to get a bigger body on him, says to me, we're going to see more Antonio Johnson in the slot, especially with Eric Murray coming back. Even if you don't have Dewey Wingard this week, if he's still in the concussion protocol, I think you'll see bigger bodied guys matching up on Warren as opposed to Kenny Moore. But at the same time, I think that, but other side of the ball. So now we flip to yes. So that's with the Jag side of it. But in the same vein, Kenny Moore matching up on Brenton Strange. I'm curious what you think of that matchup and where maybe he presents a problem for the Jaguars.
He's a good player. So, if his matchup is Brenton Strange, that's one of those things that I at least expected to be a stalemate. Brenton Strange can play. So if you want to hang him out there on Brenton Strange and let him guard him when he's going out, or have to be able to deal with him in the running game, like I said, he's double-fisted. That's a good, solid matchup, and one that's it's like this. Okay, both of y'all are pretty good, man. So whoever plays the best is going to get it done. But to your point, when you said Eric Murray was a full participant and you saw me doing like this, to your other point, because I immediately thought, big nickel, Mia, because you always talk about that big nickel. Now, this is, once again, a player who was out, sat and watched the young guys. They didn't fall off the bike. And it's like, okay, I can trust you. Now the coaching staff can say, we're going to put Eric Murray out there. We're going to put Dewey out there. And we're going to put AJ out there and make him guard this kid up in the slot. Dewey, you're going to be in that box in case Jonathan Taylor busts through there. Eric Murray, you're a veteran. I trust you to play single high or whatever. And I'm not sure that that's exactly the way they're going to call it. But now you don't have any alignment limitations that you're comfortable with everybody. You got your starter back and you got dudes that's been playing like starters. So that's what we were talking about too, why Parker's going to be missed, because you want the benefit of re-ingratiating BT into the lineup. Now you ain't going to have it because you're going to have BT and Myers as opposed to Myers and Parker when you could have had all three.
Yeah, and that's where, again, I know that the Jaguars injury report on Wednesday read like a CVS receipt, and the Cowboys did not. Or sorry, the Cowboys. Why did I say the Cowboys? The Colts did not. The Colts did not. I'm looking at some of the comments here. The Colts did not. But at the same time, I do think the Jaguars, despite maybe being the more banged up side, have more depth. Hef was the one who asked the question about Kenny Moore. He says 12 and 13 personnel, keep him off the field. Agreed to that. Robert asks, did Brenton Strange and Parker Washington play with Tyler Warren at Penn State? The answer is yes. He also wanted to know about the 3 safety looks. Anton, yes, I saw Dewey is hurt. We already mentioned that. He is in the concussion protocol. Unclear what his status is for Sunday. To T. Wig's point, that would mean that Rayon Lane, the 6th-round rookie out of the Naval Academy, would be that 3rd safety option unless they elevate Juan Thornhill off the practice squad. I certainly is an option too, but they have been impressed with what Lane has been able to do in limited spot duty as that 3rd rotating safety. And he can be that single high safety in center field too, which is something that you could have, certainly could have Eric Murray play that role. You can have Antonio Johnson play it, but he and Dewey Winger probably do much of their work than their yeoman's work, we'll call it, at the line of scrimmage. T-Wig, how does that sound?
Mixing it up. No, you're absolutely right. And that's why it's absolutely. And then you got to think about this. Jordan Lewis, he got his feet wet last week, probably still a little rusty or whatever. Now you're getting the full complement of all these veterans and guys with eyes in that navigation system on the back end, combined with the youth and the physicality of the other 2 guys. And let's not sugarcoat this. Jarian Jones has played lights out like the last 3 or 4 weeks. So I don't even want to look ahead and tell y'all that. Can you imagine this year when they got Travis Hunter? Oh, he has to save this putrid franchise. But next year when Travis comes back, it's like you may be adding him to an AFC South champion. That is a tremendous thought when we think about the fact that Trayvon, Travis, Jordan Lewis, BT have missed time this year, and this team is in this position.
Hang tight on that thought, T-Wig, because we don't want to put the cart before the horse. We want to look ahead to why the Jaguars could win this battle for first place on Sunday. But first, I do want to hit one more on the defensive side of the ball for the Indianapolis Colts. Deuce wants to know your thoughts on Zaire Franklin, the star linebacker for the Colts, who he says is a problem.
He is. It's basically Foye Oluokun on the other side of the ball. Just a heat seeker, sideline to sideline, a quarterback of that defense. Absolutely great player. Somebody talked about those tight ends at Penn State. I don't know if they mentioned Theo Johnson.
Oh, yes. Another one.
Theo Johnson. They were all up there together. It was like the Alabama running backs back when they had all of those dudes. Theo Johnson was up there with those guys too.
And better yet, T-Wig, do you know who their tight ends coach was for a little bit of time up there?
Don't.
Tyler Bowen, the Jaguars tight ends coach under Urban Meyer. Oh, the irony, the irony. The Jaguars win Sunday against the Colts if blank. We answer that question coming up next here on the Jaguar Squad Show. Hi, friends. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back. Final segment of this Wednesday edition, perhaps Marques Ogden-less edition. Oh, no. We're going to give him another 15 minutes before we get out of here of the Jaguar Squad Show. Mia O'Brien, T-Wig. We're holding down the fort here on the Locked On Jaguars channel. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, give this episode a like, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts, as all episodes of the Squad Show and the daily Locked On Jaguars program with Tony Wiggins is available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, T-Wig, it's time to answer the biggest question of the show. The Jaguars defeat the Colts for a 11th consecutive time at home if blank.
They don't turn the ball over.
That's simple.
And that does, me and Jordan DeLugo were going back and forth. That it was something like the Jaguars don't necessarily lose when Trevor throws an interception. Okay. Turnovers are bad. All right. Here's what happens. You turn the ball over, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose. And with the weather maybe being what it is, and like I already said, they don't want to get into a throwing contest. They want to run the ball, and they should with that line and that running back. But the main thing is they also have a wounded quarterback. So you turn the ball over and give them possessions and you limit possessions. Now, guess what you have to do? You got to play catch up. And we just said, guess who ain't going to let you catch up fast? Lou Anarumo. He's going to make you take one tooth at a time, baby. You ain't going to come in here and get no veneers. No, we got to do this heavy work. And the thing is now you're making it hard and difficult for yourself. And the Jaguars are usually fine in those situations, but what we've seen is the times that they aren't fine with coming from behind is when they just run out of time. And so it's always tick, 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 man. And when you lose those possessions and you lose time, I almost picked time of possession, by the way, but time of possession can probably be affected by turnover. So I just went for turnovers.
T-Wig, I have some breaking news for our 105 listeners live on the Jaguar Squad Show. Look who it is in the car. Maybe he's on the plane. Marques Ogden making it for the final 15 minutes of the program. Let's get after it, Marques. Thanks so much. We're glad you were able to make it on, if only for a little bit. I think we may be having some internet slowdown, but that's all right. You're here. So, Marques, how about what say you? The Jaguars beat the Colts Sunday if blank.
If the Jaguars establish the running game and keep the football out of the Colts' hands, that's the key. Anytime the Jaguars control the clock by running the football, they do a great job. So I was speaking in Chicago, right, T-Wig and Mia, and somebody brought up about the Packers, right? Like, tell me about the Packers. The Packers said, well, you know what? The Packers, they ended up doing some things in football against the Lions because they kept running the football. I said, running the football is like faith, right? Because the faith talk. You got to keep after it. Grind, grind, grind. Eventually, the seas will open up and you can do great things. The Jaguars just cannot get away from running the football. The Colts have a great defense, but that's their weak point, I believe, and when you run the football at them, that's something they don't like. Teams that beat the Colts this year run the football at them, and as T-Wig said, they control the time of possession.
Marques, since you're joining us a little bit late, we're going to consolidate all of our other notes we hit on today's episode with what you just said. Run the ball at who? Who on the Colts defense are you running the ball at?
I'm going to be running the football at, I forgot the DN's name. Their left D, their right DN. So basically it's going to be the left tackle.
Would he pay or Leatu Latu?
Correct. Yes. Oh, he's from UCLA, if I'm not mistaken.
Latu.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. He's a really good pass rusher, but he's not a great run stopper. You got to get the ball and go at him. Because if you go at him, you tire him out. That's going to open up later on in that second half for those 7-yard runs, those 8-yard runs. So you want to run the football at their right defensive end.
All right. And Hef also adds Samson Egbukam, the Sam linebacker, their version of Dennis Gardick, although not as superior as, of course, the long-haired wild man, the second long-haired wild man that the Jaguars have on the defensive side of the ball. And then as far as the rest of their defense goes, Marques, not having Sauce Gardner, not having DeForest Buckner, as he is still on the reserve injured list, who on that Colts defense scares you, gives you concern, and could give Trevor Lawrence and company fits?
Oh, what's the D tackle they have? The one who's been playing, I forgot his name.
Grover Stewart.
Grover Stewart.
Grover Stewart. He is a big playmaker. And again, the Jaguars have to hold that interior line of scrimmage. They cannot get pushed back in the run game. You have to at least get a stalemate to at least a half yard or a yard where the guy's going backwards to open up those running holes. So if they can really, Grover Stewart is probably one of the most athletic and physical kind of a combination D tackles in football. In my opinion, he's very underrated. I've watched him play. He's very good with his hands. He sheds blocks very well, and he takes on double teams very well. So the Jaguars have to focus their attention on him and don't let him slip through those double teams and get those tackles for losses. Those TFLs hurt, and T-Wig knows instead of being 2nd and 8, it's 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13. That's a huge difference in the NFL.
It was almost a blessing, Mia. Last week, they had to go against Simmons. It's pretty much, and you saw him. He whipped a couple of double teams. Like, hey, I don't see both of y'all. So the thing is that's actually good teach tape for them this week. It prepared them for what they're about to get into.
And to that point, boys, Vincent says the replacement for DeForest Buckner could be a nice target to abuse. That is Neville Gallimore, the Oklahoma product. T-Wig, did you catch him at the Senior Bowl once upon a time? I'm wondering if you did.
I do remember him. I don't remember specifically
Okay.
anything that's a note.
Okay. And Marcus, Robert adds that Robert Hainsey, the center, his assignment should be to stop Grover Stewart. Certainly Jeffrey Simmons gave him fits on Sunday. He also got some praise. I saw Brian Baldinger of NFL Network broke down the tape and gave Hainsey a lot of credit for holding his own against Simmons. I had some sources tell me that that maybe Hainsey and his camp, we'll call it, maybe didn't feel as impressed on some of those reps. But hey, to T-Wig's point, Jeffrey Simmons is one of one. Like he is a top 5 interior defensive lineman in the National Football League. That's a great great film tape, yes, but a great experience, especially Patrick McCarry in the concussion protocol, but progressing. If he can't go at right guard, Wyatt Milam was baptized by fire last week going up against Jeffrey Simmons.
So here's the thing, right? The only way you can test yourself as an athlete is to play against the best. That's the only way. And again, if you can handle the best, then you can handle the rest. So, I mean, I used to love playing against guys, like Ray Lewis, or I used to love playing against like Big John or Stroud, because I knew there was not going to be anybody that was as strong as Big John and Stroud together at that one shade and that 6'6", 6'7", 310, 330, 340. So that's how you get better. So anytime you can play against the best, that shows you, hey, if I can handle this guy, then the rest of the NFL, I can get it done. So, again, big matchup for Hainsey. He's just got to stay consistent and keep his footwork, right? T-Wig, I would tell him, right, keep those feet about 2 inches, right? T-Wig and Mia outside his shoulders, good base, hands inside, elbows down, and just drive that guy wherever he wants to go. Let the running back make his cuts.
I wanted to swing on Simmons last week, though. He did my boy Hainsey dirty one time. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, man, come on now.
There was one time he carried Ezra and Hainsey, and I was like, my goodness, like who is
the one I'm talking about? I saw Hainsey's feet coming around. He kind of slung him around, and I'm like, man, you ain't have to do dog like that, man.
Hey, Marcus, one more, and then I want to get your biggest concern in-house for the Jaguars, whether that's an injury or a player who may or may not play in this game or something else entirely. This was from Hef a little bit earlier in the program, and T-Wig and I already addressed it, but as the resident offensive line guru, excited to hear your thoughts. Hef says no big on big pass blocking, please. They need more zone pass blocking this week. The Jaguars do as well. What say you to that?
Absolutely, because when you go to zone, you're blocking an area. Base is really hard if your offensive line struggles to get off the football and to engage and keep their feet moving. Because what happens is if a team has a lot of stunts, games, twists, delayed blitzes, it's going to end up hurting them in the long run. So big on big really only works if your line is good and the team is not stunning a lot or running a lot of delays. But again, if there's new delays or they run stunts in games, good slide protection is it's easier to block an area than it is a man. So if you're having trouble, just slide left, slide right, keep Strange in, who's a good blocker, and have him take the edge. Have your running back cut the defensive end of the outside linebacker coming off the edge and slide. And this way it takes pressure off your offensive line. Puts a little pressure on your running back. But again, if they're good cutters and they get good in pass protection, slide is a very effective. When I was with Jaguars, right, T-Wig and Mia, I would say probably about 70% of our passes were like 2 jet, 3 jet. They were slide left, slide right, because Fred Taylor was a phenomenal running back off the edge.
T-Wig said earlier his biggest concern, if we are to be like Liam Coen and make the focus on us, on the hometown team, Marcus, he said his biggest concern is those penalties. What for you is your biggest concern in this matchup in-house for the Jaguars going up against Indianapolis?
You know what? It's going to be, honestly, the line of scrimmage both ways. They're going to have to get past rush. They're going to have to keep Lawrence upright. And again, it all depends on how much they're going to throw the football, right? But they're going to throw the football to some degree. They've got to keep the lanes open. They've got to keep the pass rush away from Trevor Lawrence. And on the other side, Hines Allen and the gang, and if Armstead's back, they've got to get some pass rush on Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones gets spooked, if he feels like he can't get into rhythm, we've seen he will turn the football over. We need the old Daniel Jones to come back, not the new.
We got a bunch of score predictions in the chat right now. And so, T-Wig, let's start with you. They're all picking the Jags. Are you also picking Jacksonville in this one?
Yeah, 24-23.
All right, 24-23. So that 1.5 point line right now in Vegas favoring the Indianapolis Colts. T-Wig is going to, just maneuver around that sports betting line. Marcus, what say you?
I'm going to go 27-21 Jacksonville.
Ooh, all right. Things have turned out well when I have tried to save the graphic and I have picked Indianapolis, and so I will. Maybe the folks out in the desert know something that we don't. I don't know. I'd love to see the Jaguars, though, pick up a big dub, and we would love to see you at Everbank Stadium on Sunday. I will be there. We won't be able to do our post-game show immediately after for the squad show, but T-Wig has you guys covered. He will have an immediate post-game reaction to whatever goes down at Everbank Stadium on Sunday. And of course, we encourage you, if you can, to go pack the bank, because you can always listen to this show on demand or while you're waiting out the traffic in your car. Speaking of cars, Marcus, we were joking off the top of the pod. We were like, man, oh man, were there ladies standing in the aisle delaying him getting off the plane? Can you take us behind the curtain? We're just glad we had you for 15 minutes here.
Yeah. Hey, you know what's funny? So when I went to Chicago, the flight got delayed an hour because the back tire the brake was out. So we were on the plane, get ready to fly. They had to pull us off the plane to be able to then fix that. And on this side, they had an engine problem. And so they pulled us off again, and now here we go again. So I'll tell you what, United, I'm not going to talk bad about anybody, but I did not have the best experience with United today, But, hey, it's okay. Nobody's perfect. It's all good. So it is what it is. Oh, by the way, T-Wig, I was going to come, but I can't. I've got a speaking job. So it's Jaguars Legends weekend this coming weekend. So you'll see a lot of the guys. So T. Brack and all the guys, Freddie T. and all those guys will be out there. I was there last year, so I wish I was coming so I could see you and come over and get you a hug.
Oh, yeah, man.
I won't be there this week, but I try to go to every Jaguar Legends game every year and support and all that kind of stuff. I'm excited to come. We have the new stadium too next year. That's going to be fun.
No doubt.
We'll have the chaos of the development and the construction. But yes, a few years down the line, we will have that new stadium. Hopefully we get Marcus before then down to Duval one more time, or maybe a time or two. Speaking of Duval, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us here for this live edition of the Jaguar Squad Show. All episodes here, whether it's the daily program or the Squad Show, are available on demand at the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel. Here we go. Vincent says, Marcus, you can roll through for that home playoff game. Hey, Vincent is picking the Jags this week too. You know it. We will be back.
Home playoff game, I'm in there.
There it is. You heard it here first, folks, but we need the Jaguars to take care of business on Sunday at Everbank Stadium. Would be, I believe, a record 11th straight home victory over the Indianapolis Colts. We'll have you covered for post-game. We'll keep you posted on when that show will be here on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel. Until then, we will catch you later.